What up, and welcome back to another Malazan Book of the Fallen video. This time we're continuing our journey with Deadhouse Gates, picking up where we left off, chapters 15 and 16. Let's get into it. You guys know the drill. We're going to do the normal thing where we go through the chapter, kind of reactions, summary analysis, whatever. Get into the spoilery stuff at the end, but don't worry. For all you newbies, I'll give you a heads up when it's time to jump out. So we pick up with Callum in what's a pretty hilarious scene. He's getting onto the boat and he gets confused by one of the crewmen for somebody who's coming to work on the boat, and the dude spills all the beans about them transporting all of Pormqual's treasure, how the treasurer, like the Imperial treasurer, is going to be on board, and then there's going to be two nobles, supposedly, and the dude kind of trash talks him the whole time, not realizing that Callum is one of those nobles, quote unquote. Part of what this crew member, though, spills the beans on is just like how screwed Coltane is, basically, and how Pormqual is hightailing it out of there, and they're just kind of the advance ship abandoning party, if you will, bouncing out with the treasure first, and then he's gonna follow second. He gets to meet his secret benefactor, Salk Elan, and immediately is super suspicious of the guy, just doesn't like him at all, just gives off super creepy vibes. He's able to just totally sneak up on Callum, which in and of itself is pretty crazy, given that he's like a super top assassin dude or whatever. Although this is the second time in the book we've seen him get snuck up on, but just besides that, just gives off that kind of sleazy vibe. But they don't get into it too long because the Imperial treasurer comes aboard, and Salk Elan has the idea of like basically needing to endear themselves to the crew members because they're on a long journey, and one way to do that is to kind of insert themselves in between the crew and this kind of arrogant noble treasurer administrator guy.
Brain make people smart.
But yeah, basically, I guess it's a foregone conclusion that the Seven Cities is done, and so Pormqual's sending all of his loot out, and Callum is just kind of like jumping on board and riding that ship back to Unta. But technically, this treasurer guy, overrules or can overrule, is like outranks Callum, outranks the captain, etc. And so he could technically, just do whatever he wants and take command of the ship at any point in time, which is sketchy. And so no matter how you slice it, Callum is kind of in for a shady ride, right? Because, doesn't trust this treasurer dude who can take command at any time. Definitely doesn't trust Salk Elan, who's got something shady going on. And he doesn't know much about this captain guy either. And they've just got a crazy journey to go. And so, yeah, he's in for a gnarly one. And then, of course, Manala jumps on the boat that's supposed to take Pormqual and his whole, household and servants and all that stuff. So she's obviously got some unfinished business there as well. Then we go back over to the Chain of Dogs, right? And we have basically the entire Wiccan Warlock contingent has been wiped out. There's only just Sormo, Nil, and Nether left. We have this, command meeting, essentially. And we have Captain Solwar, and he is actually sticking up for these nobles. He's kind of been co-opted into the plight of the nobles and is arguing, that they should go and take over this town that's fallen a while ago. They can get there, they can retake this town and then kind of hunker down. And everybody's just straight up clowning Solmar. Lowell even wants to totally beat his ass, right? He wants to strip him of his rank, and Coltane basically agrees and says you're done here, but he pulls all this procedural BS and is basically allowed essentially to continue on in his role. But then he carries on arguing for them, that we're going to retake this town, and then Pormqual will see that we're, there and hunkered down, and he's going to feel bad. And they're like, bro, if that was going to happen, why hasn't that happened already? Even Duker, I guess is how Erickson pronounced it. Somebody let me know. But, even Duker is like, that's an idiotic idea.
No, you are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Then we have like a super dope, just heartfelt scene where Lull makes Duker go with him after this meeting, because what they're doing is they're actually officially inducting all of these servants into the 7th Army officially with these chain of dogs, dog collar things that just signifies that they're truly part of the army and get actually distributed out into the regular infantry and integrated in with the normal squads, and just like a testament to the camaraderie, the like shared experience that really forged them into just one unit, and how they've really been accepted by the people who were there at one-time protectors basically. And it's also just super gratifying because we see the nobles come back. They offer to give all the gold back because it's just too heavy for them to carry, and also because there's nobody there to wash all their clothes and to cook their food and do all that stuff. And so Coltane basically tells them to suck it, and just a awesome set up on both ends, right, where you just get that kind of true justice and kind of get to give the middle finger to these entitled nobles. We see List is starting to recover from the battle where he was all jacked up, but now he's having like all these crazy visions, and they're like visions from a Jagat. Super confusing. Then we head back to the Sheikh encampment, right? And Felison is kind of digging the idea of squaring off against the Empire and going toe-to-toe, especially because her sister is going to be the one leading the army there to kind of retake the 7 cities and quash this rebellion. Leomund's starting to think like, hey, maybe she's the real deal, man. And Hiborg and the big guy, the Toblakai, are going at it. They absolutely hate each other. The Toblakai threatens to kill him many times, essentially makes it a promise, right? Like, I'm going to take you down. Hiborg tells Felison, like, look, you can't trust these guys. But she says, that's exactly why I'm keeping you around, is to kind of like be my conscience, be that voice of reason, that kind of devil's advocate that challenges me and asks me the hard questions. But he thinks, she might be biting off a little bit more than she can chew. For the first time, we do see her kind of acknowledge a little debt towards Bowden and his sacrifice for getting them out of there and, protecting her and all that stuff. It's kind of like the one time where she gives a little tip of her hat to that. But, again, Hiborg just thinks she might be biting off a little bit more than she can chew. And so they just kind of carry on, making their way back to the main encampment with the big guy taking off to go take down some, like, humongous divers.
Yes! That's awesome!
We jump over to Fiddler, who's still basically with Ikariam, Mappo, etc., on Sari's trail. They come across this ancient mechanism which Ikariam built. They're trying to connect the dots, and Ikariam thinks he built it like 94,000 years ago, which he's super tripped out by. Mappo thinks Ikariam might be the one who actually like wiped out the town back in the day, and is super tripped out on Ikariam finding this out, right? Because he's obviously trying to prevent him from getting his memories back and whatever. And Fiddler kind of, unwittingly, I think, points out that like, this is probably just a town that was wiped out by some god, and that's why you're tripped out about the dates and all of that stuff. And Ikariam kind of half buys it. And I think, Fiddler is kind of in tune with the plight of Mappo and Ikariam and what Mappo's trying to do. And so kind of throws him a bone there and helps to kind of divert his attention, Ikariam's attention, to get him out of there. And luckily for Mappo, they just get to move on. But then we get to some of the juicy bits, right? Because Crocus finds Iskar pus tracking them through the desert, and we find out a lot of interesting stuff. And basically what we learn is that they're close, but they're not close to Sheikh's oasis. They're actually close to this fragment of a warren that houses the Azath House Tremorlor, right? And what Pust and Shadow and Sari, and they come across Sari and her dad, and that is revealed basically that they set her out to set this kind of false path of hand so that all of the soul-taken Endeavors would kind of follow, thinking that there's this gate, all the while they're kind of diverting them all from the gate that really exists down in the basement of Pust's temple, which Mappo and Icarium found way earlier in the book. And so the whole thing is kind of like a red herring, and Sari and her dad and all of that were there to make it look legit and to make it look like they were doing all the things that Icarium and Mappo were speculating on, that Fiddler was wondering if she was going to ascend and then take on the Empire. All of that stuff was there to make their end of the deal look legit again, to divert all of the soul-taken Endeavors away from the real gate, so that they would all kind of follow and think that there was this pathway for them to ascend. And ultimately they're at the gates of this Azath house, and we saw what those things can do in Gardens of the Moon, but ultimately they decide that they're all going to continue to follow the trail into Tremorlor, which was Fiddler's ultimate goal in the first place. Mappo and Icarium are going to go to find out what happens. Chapter 16 picks back up with another river to cross on the Chain of Dogs. The mages can't access their warrens. We've got Stormy and Gessler who show back up. Diker immediately recognizes them as the Marines from that town where he set Culp on his mission to rescue Hiborik. He tries to co-opt Stormy and Gessler back into the Chain of Dogs, and they're not really having it. He wants to know what happened with Hiborik and Culp and all of that, and they're like, yeah, we don't really know. But they do see Corbolo Dom and his army up in the forest, like chopping down trees, and it's not to build a boat. So obviously something's going on with this river crossing and the battle coming. We also find out a little bit more about Stormy and Gessler, that they're like former Kalenved old guard folks, right? Where Gessler was a captain in the army, and Stormy was the adjutant to the admiral of the Navy, Cartheron Crust. Gessler also says, like, anybody that tries to promote him back to one of those higher ranks is going to get knocked on his ass, and immediately Coltane just socks him and knocks him right on his ass, but simultaneously also, like, breaks his hand. And Nether basically says that there was, like, so many fireworks when that happens that they've both, like, somehow essentially ascended.
Wow, what does that mean?
Corbolo Dom does send an emissary and says, hey, look, don't worry, we'll let the refugees, we understand your plight, we'll totally let the refugees cross, and, we don't want to harm them at all, dude, we have respect for you guys, and, that could totally be a deal. Coltane obviously rejects the deal. The nobles totally want him to take it, but he ends up giving Corbolo Dom's emissary the bird. Then we go back over to Raraku. We get a little bit of the big guy's backstory, not much. Both him and Leoman really want Felisin to open the book, right? The book of Dryjna that Callum delivered all those days and weeks or however long ago it was. She totally flouts the legend and the, all of the, foreseeing and all of that, and instead makes them open the book. Leoman opens it, sees nothing but blank pages. The big guy opens it up and sees something that makes him cry. Hiborik, I think, makes some kind of a comment, and the big guy says, let me just kill this guy, and she kind of gives him the thumbs up to go ahead and do it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, Hiborik's ghost hands fly into action, and he literally grabs the Toblakai by the back of the scruff of his neck and straight chucks him on his ass.
And his name is John C.
And it's at that point when Hiborik realizes too that like Fenner has never actually left him, even though he was like excommunicated and kind of shunned by all of his peers from the order, that the god himself was still always kind of with Hiborik all along. Then we go back over to Fiddler and company, and they're entering Tremorlor, right? Just the outskirts of it, and just the soul-taken Endeavors are assaulting this thing like crazy. We also get a little bit of backstory through Sari's memories of being possessed by Cotillion, that even though he's kind of bitter about the way things went down, he actually kind of has some respect for her and kind of understands what she was trying to do. Mappo and Ikariam both discuss like that the Azath might ultimately try to imprison them, but they all kind of collectively make the decision to go in there and try to help defend the Azath from all these soul-taken Endeavors. And it's actually kind of like a tragic moment for Mappo's piece, especially because he's like torn on the one hand between like fulfilling his mission, right, and preventing Ikariam from ever doing another one of these major atrocities, and kind of his friendship with the guy too. And just, you know, it's a really like kind of soul-crushing decision, or a gut-wrenching one for him to have to grapple with.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But Ikariam totally has like this moment of being totally lucid and is like, dude, I get it. I get what we've been doing this whole time, and it's all good, essentially. Like, make sure I don't accidentally destroy the world. I know what I'm signing up for. Let's do this. And so they all just kind of tragically go in there together, knowing that they face these kind of impossible choices on top of just the impossible task of helping this Azath house face down like the, you know, basically Highlander version of soul-taken Endeavors, where the strongest are the only ones left who have survived up to this point. It's just super duper sad. Iskar Pust is actually forced to call in Shadow Throne, who sends in the Hounds of Shadow, who are there to help defend the Azath, but also to serve as kind of a insurance policy against Ikariam as well, just in case all else fails. We have the Hounds of Shadow, who can also help deliver Ikariam to the Azath, or take him down themselves, or we don't really know. Back on the chain of dogs, we see that Stormy and Gessler have loaded up all of the wounded from the chain of dogs, and they're going to take them back to Aaron and try and like recruit Pormqual or somebody to send help and to rescue the rest of the refugees in the 7th Army. We also see that Corbollo Dom, at the same exact time that he was approaching Coltane, made the same exact offer directly to the nobles, who of course accept. And so come dawn, they're like pouring across and trying to, accept this offer of safety. And of course, what happens? It's a freaking ambush. And so all these logs that they're cutting down, they built like these big old floating island things that they could use to just straight up harry the crap out of these refugees as they're pouring across the river with arrows and maces and all this stuff, and just straight up destroying. Luckily, the sappers lay ropes, and so it wasn't a total stampede, and they're able to like drag some people, including Duker, across. But all of like the dead refugees, still clog up basically the crossing so that the army itself can't get across. And so ultimately Corbollo Dom's plan works.
I really don't like you.
But the one thing Corbollo Dom doesn't count on is just that when the back's against the wall, these refugees and the Wiccans just absolutely go ham. No weapons or anything. The refugees just straight up storm these floating bridges, just hands taking down army, just so many casualties, but just so many overwhelming numbers. And again, just push to desperation, make it happen. Sormo wades out into the middle of the ford and unleashes some ridiculous magic and just straight up saves so many refugees. And while he's, putting up the best he can, he gets taken down by 4 arrows at once and straight up dies. And there's like no crows there to come and take his soul, and so all of these thousands and thousands of butterflies come and harvest his soul, which would normally happen by crows, to hopefully take it back to somewhere and be custodians of it or something. We don't know. But basically all of the refugees see Sormo sacrifice, and that just kicks him up. to an even higher level, and they essentially go berserk and just completely overwhelm Corbolodam's army at that point and make the ford happen. And then the chapter closes out with maybe one of the most satisfying moments of the Chain of Dogs, probably, and that's where Nepthara wants to lodge a complaint after he totally takes the stupid offer that Coltaine told him not to and got thousands and thousands of people killed. Duker gets to just totally punch his lights out, and that was the bomb.
No! In the face! In the face! No!
So that's where we'll go ahead and leave the regular chapter stuff. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Now we're going to get into all that spoilery goodness. Not that much super speculative stuff for this time, but I did want to just ask, like, is there some kind of link between Raraku and the Nascent, right? Because they're both described as, like, fragments of a warren. I don't think Raraku was a fragment of Emerlin the way that the Nascent was, but just kind of a weird connection. One's flooded, one used to be an ocean. What's your thoughts on that? The other thing, and this isn't really a spoiler thing, but just more of an observation, I love how even at the crossing of Vathar, right, where the sappers don't play a huge role like they did in the previous couple battles with the Chain of Dogs, they still actually managed to do something and carve out like a name and do something really important that ultimately saves Duker, the nameless Marine chick, and a bunch of people ultimately, even though they weren't even the main focus of the battle. So just love me those sappers. I also like, and didn't mention this in the main video part, which I should have, but this is the first meeting between Stormy and Gessler and Bent and Roach, and I think he even picked the dog up when Diker first approaches him, or when Duker first approaches him, and like kind of picks the dog up and is able to cuddle him, which everyone was like. And also just the whole backstory with Stormy and Gessler, and, you know, how they used to be part of the old guard and how early the seeds are planted for their ascension to have started, right? This already had started a couple, chapters ago, even more probably. And now in this chapter, again, when Coltaine socks them, how Nether talks about them both having started to already ascend by this point. It's just, again, so much rich foreshadowing for the future books that, maybe some people don't think it's as action-packed. I think there was a lot of juicy chunks and pretty fast-paced during these chapters, but you got to at least appreciate the foreshadowing in hindsight, having read all the books or whatever. And so, loving these chapters, really ramping up. Look forward to wrapping up the books, doing the casting video, and then eventually starting on the next tournament and all that good stuff. So lots of fun stuff coming down the pike. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you never miss a video. Lots of ways that you can connect. I invite you to check all those out. You can check out the merch store. You can become a patron, become a member to the channel, whatever you like, or just enjoy the videos and share them and get more people into these dope books. And so we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Happy reading.